if the cassette doesn't eject or is not being taken in, it depends on the model of VCR you have. These are the models from late 2000s, actually from 2001 to 2005 or 6. These are older models from 80s and 90s. So if the cassette is not taken in or it's not being ejected, there is an issue if you have this model, and there is an different issue if you have this model. Let me just start perhaps with this model. I think this is more common that you have problems with them. There are two problems here. First, when the cassette is taken in or ejected, it uses a small motor. It could be this one, or it could be hidden, buried someplace inside this one. And notice, so again, this motor on this model is visible. However, on other models it's going to be hidden someplace and it's difficult to access. So notice two things. First, the motor has a belt, and second thing, these units have power supply. There are usually two failures. One, sure, the belt is rotten by now, it's no longer going to work, but also the small motor may also no longer work. If the motor doesn't work, it's because there is a failed capacitor in the power supply. So you may want to first make sure, just press eject or just try to insert the cassette, and make sure the motor tries to spin even if it doesn't have belt. If the motor doesn't spin, you need to find the wrong capacitor here, bring it to a TV shop if you want, replace the capacitor, make sure first the motor spins. If you don't see the motor, if it's buried someplace inside, just listen for the buzzing when you try to insert or eject the cassette. Then if the motor works, then you may want to look for a replacement belt. You notice you don't know the size. Usually the thickness is about 2 millimeter thick, square section if you want. You may want to look for a replacement belt for radio cassette units. You find plenty of replacement. Get a pack with different sizes and try to find one that fits. However, this motor may be very difficult to access. It may be someplace hidden. You may need to remove things, and removing parts from these units is horrible because you don't know how to put them back in place. So just think in advance. Again, these are the models from 80s, 90s. Notice how it's a big circuitry. Sometimes it's several layers of circuitry. Also power supply. Again, power supply, big circuitry. You don't need to remove everything, but the motors may be buried someplace inside. Now, if you have the later models from 2000 up, 2005, these units are very light. And also notice there is no longer power supply in there, and also the motor, usually it's direct drive, there is no longer belts on it. This is a similar model, a later model, 2000-2005 or so. Again, no power supply. Notice the cable goes directly to the plate circuit board. There is no belts whatsoever. There has to be a motor someplace. We don't see it here, but there is no belt. If these units don't take the cassette in and don't eject it, oftentimes it's a problem with these sensors. So there usually is going to be, I'm going to show you, link you in the comment section, a video when I show close up and explain. So there's going to be sensors on both sides. Maybe there's a third one in the middle. This sensor may get grease on them, may get dirt on them, and they need to see. Usually they need to see when you insert the cassette, it's going to be a moving piece here, and it goes in front of the sensor. The sensor knows it has to start pulling the cassette inside. So you need to check the sensor. They don't fail. They either get dirty or they get slightly toast, misaligned. So it's easy to fix this usually. That's one reason. A second reason on this kind of units, especially the ones made after 1997 to 2001 or 2, especially Sony ones, had what's called the capacitor plug. The small capacitors on circuit will start failing, and there are many of them, and it's almost impossible to fix. Unfortunately, just make sure first, check the sensor are fine. If it still doesn't work, it's probably the small capacitors that have failed, and there's nothing you can do, just throw it away. Again, there is no power supply in these units whatsoever. This is not a power supply. So that's the two problems that may have happened with this kind of units, and also the two problems: power supply, this is the power supply, and the belt depends where the motor is on these older units from the 80s and 90s. These are the most reliable ones, the ones I do recommend if you want to still use a VCR, except from the ones from late 90s, especially Sony ones. Be aware. But these ones, usually if you see yours, it's very empty inside, very, very empty, just like this one. This is everything that you find inside, nothing else there. There is no layers, no nothing else. These are the more reliable ones, and the image is still very good, but people don't like them because they were cheaply made. But the image is still good enough, and they should be reliable and last you several years without problems.